Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Today's episode is the weekly review for Friday the 23rd of June, although I am recording this a bit late due to the first recording going catastrophically wrong. So apologies for the lateness of this episode. As has been the case the last couple of weeks, actually some stuff to discuss this in the weekly review. And after that, I'll be giving you my top 10 tight ends currently in the NFL. So we'll start with what I suppose is the biggest piece of news coming from the league this week. And that is Derek Carr being extended by the Raiders, now the highest paid player in the NFL, to a 5-year, $125 million a year contract. Had a bit of time to ruminate on this, but really it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise. It just seems to be how it is now. If you're one of the, quote unquote franchise quarterbacks, your contract's up, you just become the highest paid player in the league by almost default. I personally would have liked to have seen another season along the lines and caliber of what we saw from Carr last season before the team makes this kind of commitment. However, this kind of situation, team doesn't have a whole lot of options. They kind of have to get it done. Otherwise, you have a situation kind of like the Redskins do with Kirk Cousins, and that just hanging over the team. I think it can be a distraction for all those involved around the franchise, and especially because the Raiders, I think, have legitimate hopes for a deep playoff run and potential Super Bowl berth heading into next season. If they can get that defense shored up, I think the offensive side of the ball certainly looks like it'll be capable of handling its half of the bargain. Also, you have to bear in mind this is a team that's relocating to Vegas in a couple of years. Got to keep the team as marketable as possible. Nothing does that more than having a legitimate franchise quarterback. And also, I think you've got to bear in mind, the recent history of the Raiders has been pretty appalling. So, from that aspect alone, this is a team that had absolutely no choice but to get a deal done. I like the fact it's been done so early before training camp begins, because once that happens, that would just be the talk of the whole thing, that constant distraction, other players being asked about that. Now the team can focus more, as got that longevity there at the quarterback position. I think it's a big boon to this team. As I say, Carr clearly looks like an ascending player at the position, and like he's going to be one of the top quarterbacks in football for the next few years. For me, as I say, it's maybe a year early to give him this kind of money. You get the long-term concern, rather like what we've seen, I think, with certain franchises like the Ravens, where it becomes very difficult to pay guys. This is a team that at the minute doesn't have it so bad, but a couple of years down the line, you're going to have guys like Khalil Mack could easily end up being the highest paid defender in the league, Amari Cooper. Once you have the quarterback, as we've seen with the Ravens, it can be quite difficult to get your team back into a position where they can afford a lot, to keep the team well balanced. Unfortunately, the rookie contract window, which is a huge benefit to a team, as we saw with the Seahawks, who are now starting to, feel the heat of the salary cap a little bit now that Russell Wilson signed to a long-term deal, as are so many of those defenders. They've had to cut their losses essentially at the defensive tackle position and on the offensive line, just because there isn't, even in this era where teams have more money to spend than ever under the salary cap, there's still just not enough money to go around. So from that perspective, it will end up limiting what the Raiders do. Of course, give it a couple of years, this won't be even close to the highest paid quarterback in the league. That's just how it goes. We've got Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers coming up. I'm sure they'll be looking for a deal along these kind of lines. But as I say, the Raiders, they've done it. They had no choice. I like the timing of it. Just getting it out of the way, not allowing it to be a distraction. So good job there. And congrats, Raiders. You look like you've got your quarterback for the long term. Another good signing this week, Eric Decker signing with the Titans on a 1-year, about $3 million deal. I think this is a great move for the Titans. Their receiving core looked much improved on paper as it was, but a lot of that was very much speculative. Decker now gives them someone proven and reliable on the outside. I'm not sure he's a true number one, but to be honest, I look at this offense, I'm not sure there's going to be that guy. Of course, you've got Corey Davis there now. Tajay Sharp had an up and down rookie season, but he looks like he could be a guy that contributes. Delaney Walker's a fine player at the tight end spot. Decker gives them something that they didn't necessarily have in a big physical receiver, very dangerous in the red zone. So I think that will benefit Mariota greatly. And as well as that, just someone with some experience, which, of course, you got Walker at tight end, but the rest of this receiving group was very young, very green. Having someone there who's been around the league will help them no end, I'd imagine, in meeting rooms, and it should also help on the field. I think this significantly strengthens the Titans' receiving group. And to be honest, I think this makes them the front runner in the AFC South. For me, they look like they're going to be a pretty good team next year. Be interested to see how Mariota copes now that I imagine expectations will be significantly higher around this passing game. Now that you bring in a solid number 2 type receiver in Eric Decker, a top 10 draft pick, 5th overall pick in Corey Davis. Expectations are going to be higher. They do need to be a bit more productive on that side of the ball, but Mariota has progressed very well through the first 2 years of his career. I think this is a great signing. Of course, the value in terms of what they're paying is fantastic. There's no risk attached. There's no reason to think that Decker's not going to be a solid player for them. And, if things work out well, I'm sure they'll be able to work something out next season to keep him around for a little bit longer. But this definitely makes a lot of sense for this team. I think it's one of the best signings of this off-season. And, the Jets' tank next season continues to help other franchises looking for more players. Similarly, David Harris, he's been picked up by the Patriots in a move that should surprise absolutely nobody. Harris is older player now. Used to be, one of them guys that would fly around the field racking up tackles. That's not quite the case anymore, but he's an experienced player. He's always been a pretty solid tackler. I'm sure he'll be a solid 2-down backer for the Patriots. The Patriots have always been very multiple in their personnel, so he will see the field and he'll be put in situations where he's going to be used to do what he does effectively, and that is play the run. I don't expect to see him running down the field with tight ends over the course of this season. Makes a lot of sense for the player. He gets to now go chase a Super Bowl ring on what's likely to be one of the front runners next season. I say likely, it is one of the front runners heading into the season. I think this helps the Patriots' depth. Never hurts to have someone who's been around the league for such a long time and played at a reasonably high level on your roster. And as I say, this move should surprise no one. It's a typically New England type move. I'm sure it must hurt Jets fans to see a long time face of the defence heading to New England, but alas, this is the world that we live in. I've got some news from Kansas City this week. Andy Reid's been extended. This makes a lot of sense for both parties. He's done a fantastic job bringing this franchise back to relevance. I think people have somewhat forgotten just how bad they were when Andy Reid took this job in the first place. They have been highly competitive ever since he took it. They look like a team that's ready to compete for the playoffs on a yearly basis. And if they can just get a bit more oomph in that offense, I think they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. So he deserves all the plaudits. Being a fantastic head coach, he just needs a Super Bowl on his resume, and I think he'll then be regarded as one of the best coaches of his generation. And you could probably already regard him that way. He has been incredibly successful. The one thing I'm slightly dubious though is that the Chiefs have fired general manager John Dorsey, and this team has done a great job in the personnel department over the last few years. To turn around the roster like that. They have one of the best all-round rosters, I think, in the NFL. Defensively, they've got a lot of depth and quality. Offensively, there's some nice pieces. As I say, could be a bit more explosive, but they've done a pretty solid job. It was a quick rebuild, done very effectively. My concern here is that, on the face of it, doesn't make much sense to get rid of him. It may be Andy Reid getting more control over the front office, much like he had towards the end of his time in Philly. That didn't work out too well. So I would be concerned if I was a Chiefs fan that may again be the case. It tends not to work fantastically when you have, a head coach doing everything in the front office as well as the coaching. So I definitely want to keep an eye on that. If I were a Chiefs fan, I'm intrigued to see how that pans out. It's a bit of a perplexing move for me. I'm sure Dorsey will easily be able to find another job considering the success that he had in KC. Who knows what he may do for the rest of this year. Might be nice for him just to take a year off. But it's a bit of a strange one. I agree with extending Andy Reid. That makes perfect sense. But this one, I'm a little bit dubious of. We'll see how it goes. And Ryan Grigson, from a successful general manager to one that was an absolute disaster in Indianapolis. He's now working for the Browns. Now, we got a general manager job, so he must have been doing something right in the first place. And we'll see how this works out. The Browns, of course, likely to have some high draft picks. Hopefully they do a better job with them than Grigson's Colts did. So I'll be interested to follow along, see if he can salvage his name a little bit after, as I say, a disastrous spell with the Colts. So there you have it. That's my rundown of the weekly news. Let me know if you think I missed anything. I'll deliver my opinion on that next week. So going to finish off today's episode with a rundown of my top 10 tight ends currently in the NFL. So you'll notice one thing. At the top of this list, I've got the guys that can do the blocking and the receiving. I consider it far more useful to a team to have a guy that can do both. But let's get into it right now. Number 10, we've got the Buccaneers' Cameron Brate. Only been in the league a couple of years, and last year he had a highly productive season and was essentially the Buccaneers' number 2 receiving weapon behind Mike Evans. Had 8 touchdowns, is very effective in intermediate throws, very good body control, good hands, and it seems to have developed a real rapport with Jameis Winston, particularly on sort of seam routes up the middle of the field. He was very dangerous on those. I'm not sure he's going to ever necessarily develop the skills to be a great blocker. He's not quite got that level of physicality to him at this point in time, but who knows? He's got OJ Howard breathing down his neck now. I don't think that's going to be a huge deal. The Bucs are pretty multiple in their use of tight ends. Dirk Cutter likes to use 2 tight ends as much as anyone in the league. And of course, OJ Howard, one of the reasons he was drafted so highly and thought of so highly coming into the draft is he was an exceptional blocker. So this may free up Cam Brate, I think, to be used as more of a move tight end this year. I think that will benefit him. It will suit his skill set, and it will allow the Buccaneers the option of playing with multiple bigs on the field, which I think Jameis Winston's pretty good at throwing those high point balls. So I think he's one of them guys a lot of people probably haven't heard of. Of course, an undrafted free agent, only been in the league a couple of years, but last year he was very effective. I think he looks like one of the best young receiving talents at the position in the league, and he comes in at number 10 on the list. So we'll go from the new to the old. 9, we've got Jason Witten of the Cowboys, and what a career he's had. Still a steady and dependable player, not quite as quick as he once was, but still an incredibly useful asset to have in the passing game. He's always been very good at exploiting those zones in the intermediate and short part of the field. Has been a very solid and dependable blocker, which of course in that Cowboys offense is absolutely invaluable at this point in time. What a leader he must be to have around that locker room. He's been with his franchise for a very long time, and he's been an incredibly good player over that period. As I say, not quite the player he was a few years ago, where he was one of the absolute top receiving threats in the league at the position. I do think they need to start looking for a replacement, but he still has a role, and due to his ability to block as well as be a possession receiver, a third down type guy that you can rely on, he's just about manages to edge onto the list. Coming in number 8, we've got the brand new Packer, Martellus Bennett. Struggled to sort of find a home these last few years, but of course had a very good season last year with the Patriots. Benefited somewhat from Gronkowski's injury, managed to fill that void admirably. Again, this is a guy who does contribute in the run game. Is not a great blocker, but he's certainly competent, which is more than most in the league at this point in time. He's a very physical receiver. I don't think he's the quickest or the most reliable route runner, but he'll add an element to this Packers offense that they've not had in a while. I think he could potentially put up some pretty big numbers. He's very dangerous after the catch, and I think he'll be a great fit there in Green Bay. Comes in number 8 on this list. Number 7, got a guy that doesn't really do the blocking so much. We've got Jimmy Graham of the Seattle Seahawks. I think we've seen some degree his productivity was with New Orleans was inflated by that offense. It took him a while to find his rhythm in Seattle. I think we saw signs of it last year. Much like when I was discussing Cam Bray earlier, he's really the number 2 receiving option there in Seattle at this point in time, behind Doug Baldwin. As I say, offers very little in the blocking game, but he is, one of the first of this current generation. We're seeing more of them, the move type tight ends who are essentially a big 6'5" receivers that can run routes. He's one of the best athletes at the position in terms of body control and being able to just go get the ball. Has made some ridiculous catches over the course of his career. I'm not sure him and Russell Wilson have always been on the same page. Not quite got that connection yet, which is one of the reasons I've got him a bit lower on this list, as well as I say, the lack of blocking. But he's still an incredibly dangerous weapon. I think he's as good a deep threat at the tight end spot as you've got in the league. Can really run for a guy his size, and I say he's got phenomenal body control. Will make some spectacular catches. Coming on number 6, we've got a player who I think is very similar and I think has exceeded Graham at this point in his career, Jordan Reed of the Redskins. To me, he's the prototypical move tight end for today's NFL. You could line him up out wide in the slot as a traditional tight end, and he's going to be a threat. Far too fast for most linebackers and far too big for most defensive backs. He's an absolute matchup nightmare. Just look what he did to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving last year. Makes some absurd catches. Incredibly quick. He's a better route runner, I think, than some people would have expected at this point in his career. Very good hands. Just a fantastic all-round receiving option. I would like to see him improve his blocking game. That's the one area I would critique at this point. But he has turned into a great weapon, and really he was their number 1 option in the passing game last year when he was healthy, and had a superb season as a result. Moving up, this one, player number 5, is a bit of a tough one. I've gone for Tyler Eifert of the Bengals because I think he's fairly similar to the 2 guys below. I think he's a bit better in the red zone. I think he's a better route runner than both of them, but he has had problems staying healthy. This really affected the Bengals last year. By the time he did get healthy, AJ Green got injured. As a result, that offense never really managed to get itself properly going in the passing game. A real lack of weapons. Hopefully that won't be the case for the Bengals this year. I think when he's healthy, he's maybe only an average blocker, but the effort is there. Dangerous vertical threat, great hands, very good at making tough catches in traffic, great in the red zone. Just a very, very good overall player. As I say, health has been the one thing that slowed him down these last couple of years. Now we're heading into what I would consider the class of the NFL at this point in time. Guys that can block and can catch. And coming in at number 4, we've got Delanie Walker of the Tennessee Titans. He has been fantastic since he got to Tennessee. The Niners really messed that one up. Vernon Davis had been great for them, so I can understand the logic at the time. Maybe they got a bit unlucky. Vernon Davis kind of fell off pretty quickly. Delanie Walker has showed that he possibly should have been a bigger part of that offense when he was there. He's a very capable blocker, of course, very handy to have in the Titans scheme. They do run a lot, and that's going to continue to be the case. He's one of the better blocking tight ends. Maybe not the deep threat that some of the guys that we've mentioned in the list so far, but very good route runner, very smart player. Probably the best receiving threat the Titans have had the last couple of years. He's been, great for Marcus Mariota's development. Very effective, in the short and intermediate. And, I think with some of the help he's going to have in the receiving game, he could be primed for a very, very big season this year as he gets a bit less attention. Coming in number 3, we've got the Carolina Panthers' Greg Olsen. Man, the Bears messed up when they got rid of this guy. He has really just continued to improve throughout his time in the NFL. He's become a very good run blocker. Definitely the best receiving option on the Carolina Panthers, and that's been the case for a few years now. It's just incredibly difficult to stop. Very smart player, capable of making catches in all 3 phases, short, intermediate and deep. He's a great route runner. He's got very good hands, understands the game incredibly well. Has maybe not quite got the deep speed of some of these other guys, but can run double moves, can run the corners and the post very effectively. He's a fantastic player. He has been killing the Bucs the last few years, and I really do dread to think what the Panthers' pass offense would look like without him last year. He's the only guy that really offered anything consistently for them last season. Great player. I think he's been highly underrated for the last few seasons. He's been playing lights out football. Coming in number 2, for me, one of the best young tight ends in the league and the best tight end in the league last season, Travis Kelce of the Chiefs. What a season he just had. This guy can block. He's a threat going deep. You can line him up as a move tight end. You can line him up in line. He'll do a great job regardless. He is the Chiefs' number 1 receiving option, especially now that Jeremy Maclin's gone. Of that, I've got no doubt. And similarly to the guy who is going to be, unsurprising at number 1, really tough physical runner after the catch, and I think that's what kind of separates him from the 2 guys below. I think he's a far more dangerous player after the catch, runs with an attitude, really has refined his route running over the last couple of seasons, and he's just turned into an incredible player. Last season he was dominant, and I think the best player on the Chiefs offense by a considerable distance. Great in the red zone. It really can do it all at this point. Is a player with no holes in his game whatsoever. And then, let's face it, probably see this one coming in at number 1, Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots. I mean, he's the best tight end I've ever seen play. It's really not even close. He's a monstrous run blocker. By far the best blocking tight end I've seen. Outside of maybe the pure run block specialists, like the Vikings had that Jim Kleinsasser guy. He was very good, but he did not offer the threat receiving the ball that Gronk does. What is there to say? When he's on the field, he's the perfect tight end weapon. Does everything. Much like I said with Kelce, phenomenal after the catch. Just trucks through defensive backs. Will outrun most linebackers with ease. Great hands, great body control. It's pretty much, if you have to design a tight end, you end up with Gronk. There's really not much more to say on it than that. The only thing that stops him is his health. Of course, he has missed a lot of games, but man, what a weapon when he's on the field. No doubt he's the number 1 tight end in the NFL when he's on the field. So there you have it. That's my top 10 tight ends. Tune in next week, and I'll be going through my top 10 safeties. Getting very close to the end of these top 10 lists, so I'll have to come up with something else for the end of these weekly reviews. So that should be interesting. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think. If you want to discuss anything from the show today, whether it's the top 10 list or any of the news, give me something that you'd like to hear me talk about, do so. Whether it's the comment section below, find me on Facebook, Cover Zero, find me on Twitter, @Simon Conboy. Be more than happy to discuss anything related to the league with you guys. Always fun to talk ball. Check out some more of the show. You know, I've got the power rankings coming up Monday, the finale of those. I think it's been a really interesting series, trying to do power rankings a bit differently to how they're normally done. Or having the usual stuff, you know, another QB quandary, another cover who, and my final episode of the top 100. So I've got a lot of stuff planned for that, actually. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm going to break down the players list in its entirety in terms of, you know, what positions they've gone for, compare it to my list. I think that should be really entertaining, so definitely recommend checking that out. If you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon if you enjoyed it. It would be massively appreciated. Really do appreciate all of you guys who check out the show. And yeah, thank you so much again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great day and go Bucks.